to my Hey It's Carly Rae book club on YouTube. Today I'm super excited because I am doing an author interview, but before I reveal which author I will be interviewing, you guys can hit the subscribe button and then hit the bell to be alerted of all of my new videos. So without further ado, the author I am interviewing today on my channel is da-da-da-da.
Hi, my name is Zachary Ryan. I am the author of Silent Screams.
He is the author of this amazing novel, and I did a feature of it on my book club, and I put on all my social media asking you guys to send me questions about this amazing author because I wanted to get some of you guys' feedback and see what you guys wanted to hear from the author. So that is what we are going to be getting started in today in this author interview. Taylor from Instagram, you had the first question I selected, and to Zachary, you want to know, did you always know that you wanted to be an author?
To say no. I've been writing my whole life. I started writing my first book when I was 8 years old. It was a weird book. But I honestly wanted to first be a lawyer, then I wanted to be a forensic scientist, then a lobbyist, and then I think finally was a psychologist. So I went to school for social science. Midway through my second year, I was like, I'm not really happy about this. And I realized the consistent in my life was me writing. So I decided to switch my major to creative writing when I transferred to Towson University. And I've never looked back. Like I said, I've always been writing. It's been the only constant in my life. And I'm so grateful that I decided to stick to being a writer.
Well, Zachary, we are also glad you stuck to writing because we love silent screams. Now, your second question today comes from Hannah from Twitter. She wanted to know what inspired you to write Silent Screams.
So the inspiration behind Silent Screams came from a song by Katie Turner. And in the song, she has a lyric where it's an applause that was never meant for me, and that resonated with me because I created the character Zachary based off that, where she's an actress who's looking for this applause. It's never hers, and she always felt like she never meant to have it. And then I created Lane just because I'm gay, and I wanted to do this snowball of a different LGBT. I didn't want it to coming to terms with sexuality. He knows he's gay. It's just more of he likes being under the radar, so that's kind of where I start with that. Then I wanted to go from an alpha dog to someone less, and that's where Ben came from. Cass kind of was created just randomly. I wish I had an explanation for that. I don't know where I got the inspiration for her, but I do love her. She's my favorite. And then I wanted to add a school shooting. I was going to plan on doing that at the ending. It was going to lead up to it. But I really like the idea of the aftermath. We've had so many school shootings in the United States. It's like, okay, well, what happens to these kids after the fact? And I wanted to add that in there.
Cass was also one of my favorite characters, and I do agree, Zachary, the subject matter of having a school shooting within your novel, I think that's a very important thing to be told, and I do think there needs to be more books like that. Like I said in my review, it reminded me of Cody Keplinger's book, That's Not What Happened, which was also based on a school shooting. So that is why when I got the opportunity to read your novel, I was really eager to dive into it, and it definitely delivered. So thank you for telling us what inspired all of your characters. I find that an interesting question. I'm glad Hannah asked us that. Now, the third question is from Matt from Twitter. He wants to know, are your characters based on people you know?
Silent Screams or any of my books predominantly are not based off characters that I know. Just because I don't want to pigeonhole myself or box me in when it comes to creative writing. I did write a book called Thirst Trap where a lot of the characters were based off my friends, and I was starting to write and I was like, ooh, I'm scared. I don't want to hurt their feelings but I want to be able to be free will with it. So I usually add an Easter egg or two in there just so you kind of get a tidbit of my life. Especially in Silent Screams, there is a point where Colby and Lane are having sex for the first time, and that was an experience that I had for my first time. So that's the Easter egg in here. But I really just like to keep my characters kind of crazy and out there just because I don't want to feel obligated to make them nice or mean or anything close to people around my life. just so I don't have to worry about hurting anybody's feelings. So no, the characters are completely out of this psycho mind.
Yeah, I know, like, I am an aspiring writer as well, and my characters aren't based on people I know either, so that is an interesting question. I know some writers do base it on people they know and everything like that, but I mean, I guess some characteristics I have, but not really either. So your next question comes from Brandon from Facebook. He wants to know, did you ever get writer's block while writing? And what did you do to break through that writer's block?
So I get my own type of writer's block, where I get too many ideas at once, and then I'm like, I can't write this book, or I get too bored of a book. So my way to get through that is to write the book as soon as possible. I try to write at least 2 book chapters a day. I usually give myself about a month to a month and a half to write a book. Just because if I get past 2 months, I'm like, I'm over this book. I got like 3 other ideas for books that I really want to write. And I'm like, I want to get on that. I want to get on that. I did have that happen with me. I wrote this book called Forgive Me, Father, I Have Sinned. And I got like 300 pages into it. And I was like, I'm still coming up with so many different ideas. I like wrote a different book, then came back to it, then wrote a different book. Like I kept coming back to it. And I was like, I need to be done with this book. I'm over it. So I deleted it. I'm like, I forgot about it. And I knew from that point, I was like, I have to like stick to one idea, stick to one book, or I'm going to honestly snowball and I can't even finish this book. So that's like my version of writer's block.
Yeah, and I do think a lot of authors have different types of writer's block. I do agree with you. Like some of the novels that like I was playing around with, like the longer it took, the more I felt like I had writer's block trying to get through it, and it's just kind of like a slow, like, oh my gosh, am I almost done yet? So yeah, I do definitely see how there are different types of writer's block when we are all writing our novels. So your next question comes from Emma Grace from Instagram. She wants to know, do you have to be in a certain place to write at a certain time of day? Walk us through your writing process.
So my writing process is a bit different. I will first off start off with an idea that I get. Ironically, when I'm ending a book, I'm like, ooh, this is a good idea for a book. So then I'll start thinking of it. Hold on, I'm trying to grab my... So I have this lovely thing, and then I'll put all my ideas in it. So I'll have, like I said, okay, so like chapter 40, I want these things to happen in there. So that's kind of how I do it. And then what I usually do, which I'm going to move it again, is I have a giant thing above my desk that will tell me, okay, this is what I want chapter to be like. So I have 2 different boards, one being just each of the chapters, and above that is what I want for the characters and what I want them to be like. So that's how I kind of usually write it down. It makes it very quick for me to know, okay, I want this to happen. And then I'll write everything. Sometimes, like I said, middle of the book, I'm like, oh, that's a interesting turn, because one of my favorite things is this author of The Vault. I forget his last name, his actual name. He wrote about how he likes to follow his characters around and see what they do, and that's what I like to do. So my characters take me on a wild ride sometimes, and then I'll go back and kind of like sprinkle in, okay, this is, so you're not like, wait, this is so out of left field. But predominantly I plan. I usually get about like quarter of the way, and then I figure out the rest of the book. Usually I know the beginning and the end, and then the middle kind of like takes me all over the place. But that's how I kind of process my writing.
I definitely love that writer's board. That is awesome. I can't say I have ever seen that before, so that was super cool for showing us. Now your next question comes from Karen from Twitter. She messaged me and she wanted to know, what did it feel like when you finally finished Silent Screams?
So when I finished Silent Screams, it was weird for me just because Silent Screams is my favorite book, which I will never have this feeling. Yes, my friends will say I think about this with all my books. But with Silent Screams, it's special because it's my 50th book I wrote. So I added a lot of elements of my first 49 books in that, like little tidbits here and there. For me, I was happy. I was indifferent. I don't know. I always feel indifferent when I finish a novel because I feel like there needs. I'm like so into this, like go go go, write this book. You have chapters, you have to do this, you have to do this, and then when I finish, it's like oh, I'm done, and I don't feel like I'm done. I never feel like I finished the novel. I never feel like I'm like, okay, I'm complete. I'm always like, and it usually takes a couple days before I'm like, okay, you're actually done with the book. You're good. But with Silent Screams, I was happy to finish it just because it was my baby. It was my 50th book, and it's something so close, near, and dear. I loved all those characters, and the more and more I talk to people about Silent Screams, or I'm answering all these questions for people about it, I'm like, oh yeah, that happened. Oh my god, I love that. So like now I'm at the point where I'm like, oh, I love this book. So like I have this like sense of like pride with it, and I hope it does well. I mean, so far people are enjoying it. But yeah, so like when I finished Silent Screams, I was happy, but I like I said, I never feel like I'm finished with the novel right when I finish. Even when I write that last word, I'm like, there's another chapter, and I'm like, no, there's not, and it's a weird feeling.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Anybody that writes, or, at least me, an aspiring writer, like, I'm like that too. Like, I'll go back and I'll be like, oh my gosh, like, I missed something. Or, like, I'll be rereading it and I'll be like, well, maybe I should fix that. And then I'm like, no, just leave it alone. So I can definitely relate to that as well. Your next question comes from Marco from Facebook. He wants to know, if you weren't writing, what would you be doing?
If I wasn't writing, I would kind of just be doing what I'm doing now. I'm a bartender. I'm a general manager of a bar, so I kind of have both that going on. I would probably be a psychologist because psychos know other psychos. So I think I would be a psychologist. Like I said, I'm also a bartender. I manage a bar. I enjoy that. It's always something I've always loved doing. But also on top of that, if I wasn't a writer, my end game in life is to be a creative writing professor. So I would love to go back to get my master's so I can teach creative writing because it's something I absolutely love and adore, and I end up planning on doing that. So I think I would do all three, which sounds so weird, but I think it all kind of connects it together in a weird, weird, disturbing way. So if I wasn't writing, I'd probably be one of those three things.
Well, that's awesome. You could always write a book where there is a psychologist and a bartender. Just throwing that idea out there. And now your next question comes from Sally from Instagram. She said, how important is editing? Do you recommend aspiring authors to hire an editor?
I think editing is huge. I think it is extremely important. I am not gonna lie. I bleeping hate editing. I can't stand it. I get bored of it. I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. It's just for me, it's so tedious. It like for me, once you get to the editing phase, I don't feel any creative. I feel like it's very like pen and paper kind of. Like, I don't know. It just very tedious to me. But it's so important because you need to look over and be like, that's not what I wanted. Or like, okay, that's repetitive. I know that's my biggest thing is like sometimes things are very repetitive because I'm like, I want you to understand this. And once you go back, you're like, that's not true. For hiring an editor, I personally have an amazing friend who's also my editor. Her name's Erica Nelson. She has done great things for me with my editing. It's great to have someone you can bounce off of. Like, oh, I don't know if this is good. I feel like I shouldn't. And Erica does that a lot for me. She's like, I like where you're going, but switch this up. Or like, I see what you're trying to say, but like, so I think it's good to have someone else. So I would say personally, find a friend, not an editor, or hire. And I think find a friend that like is good at editing and stuff, or someone who can look over your stuff. Like this doesn't make sense. I see where you're going. So I got blessed with my friend Erica, who is like, I see what you're trying to do, and we work very well together. So I think editing is huge because you can make mistakes that you don't realize, and then it's good to have it out. But I hate it, but it's so necessary.
Yeah, and I agree. I do think editing is huge in writing. One of the books that I finished, I decided to actually hire an editor, but I do think it is important, even when you do hire an editor, to have like a good chemistry with them, to be able to talk to them, to be able to message them and have them like give you feedback. So I do think it's important that even if you do have a friend or you do hire an editor, that you have some kind of connection with them where they like love your work, or like when you talk to them, you guys connect on a separate level, because I found it a really big thing when I got my editor. Her name was Kate, and she did an awesome job helping me edit my book. She helped me see like different things that I wouldn't have seen. And like you said, like they kind of like see like, hey, I see where you're going, but it's not really written super clear, so I don't think a reader would see that. So they see stuff that you don't see. So I definitely agree, Zachary. I do think hiring an editor is a huge thing in writing, because I don't think like we get so attached to it that it's like hard for us to kind of put up that like separation with editing and writing. So yeah, I definitely do agree with you there. Now I have a personal question for you. I want to know any advice for aspiring writers, authors out there looking to get their work out there.
So, my biggest advice for aspiring authors, honestly, to be know who you are as a person. I think that is the biggest advice. Like I said, I've written like 52 novels at this point, and I would say like my first like 25 novels, I didn't know who I was. I was still in the closet. And once I came out and was fully accepting that I was gay and who I was able to write stuff that I could connect with. I always felt like there was this wall, and I felt like finally when I was fully who I am, that was when I was able to write what I loved. Another thing is be obsessed, like grossly obsessed with what you're writing. I forget who said it, but if you aren't laughing at something, someone else won't laugh. If it's supposed to be something funny and you're not laughing at it, then your reader's not going to laugh at it. And I think that's something, like I've had it sometimes where I'm like writing a scene and I'm like crying. So I think you have to be fully invested and fully obsessed with what you're writing, or it won't resonate. So A, be true to yourself, and B, be obsessed with what you're writing. And then C, have a thick skin. You're going to have a lot of people that will hate your stuff. I had a book and someone said I should never be a writer. This is the worst thing I've ever written. Seen. It is terrible. Who wrote this garbage? Like, it's hard. So, but you gotta have a thick skin and be open to criticism, but also take it with a grain of salt. People are not gonna like what you're not gonna be the best author in the world, and hopefully you're not gonna be the worst. Just accept you're gonna be in the middle.
I think that is awesome advice. Yeah, you do need to take the criticism with a grain of salt. You can't, you got to have a thick skin. So yeah, I do agree with that as well. Another question that I have for you is, what has it been like being an indie author? Can you tell us the challenges and benefits of being an indie?
Um, it's weird being an indie author, and then I don't consider myself an indie author, and that's why like I get questions like, "Oh, what do you have for your fans?" I don't have fans. I don't think I do. I feel like I force my friends don't even read my books, like let alone strangers read them. I think the biggest challenge is getting your book out there. It's extremely hard when you're indie. You're promoting yourself all the time, and I have it where like even on my personal Facebook, I'm like, buy my book, and I feel like I'm annoying my friends, like, I'm sorry. So I think that's the biggest challenge, is getting your book out there. I got lucky where I've stumbled upon Google, and Google is a beautiful thing to find bloggers and reviewers and promotions and all these wonderful, beautiful things to help you get your book out there. But I think that's the drawback. I think the benefit is when you are promoting your own book, you get to choose how you want to spin it or who you want to send it to, in that aspect. But yeah, it's a struggle. I'm not gonna lie. It's a rough one.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do think there are benefits of being an indie, and then there are some drawbacks just because, you're doing everything on your own. And so finally, I'm going to conclude today's interview. The last question that I got online was from Anna, and she was from Twitter. She messaged me, and she wanted to know, would you recommend being an indie author versus being traditionally published? She wanted to know your thoughts on that.
I think for me, when it comes to both traditional versus indie, I am gonna have to say traditional. Just because I think it's easier. When you're an indie, you're doing a lot of work, and sometimes you're not getting the payoff for it. It's hard because That's what a lot of your own time and money into doing it. Yes, I love my work and I will continue spending my money and time to make sure my book gets out there. But a part of me wishes I had a traditional because they can promote it and it's easier to get into bookstores and it's easier to get on Amazon and people get to see it more. So I think for me, I would have to say traditional because it's easier. Like indie's kind of cool because you're like underground, but a part of me is like I want my books to get out there for people to read. I like I said, I love it. I'm not trying to be rich and famous from this. I mean, no, I mean, most authors are not rich and famous from this. But I just think it's easier once you're in a traditional space. It's just easier. I feel like I've been doing this for 10 years now of publishing my books. And I'm like the last 2 years, I've seen a bit of, I mean, the last year I've seen my books have been doing well. Like they've been getting out there and people are recognizing it, but it's really hard. So that's another thing is it's hard when you're an indie. I mean, there is some value to it because you know you're putting in all that hard work, but I think you have to be an indie author to become a traditional author. You have to put the work in because if you don't appreciate it as much.
Yeah, and I agree. Like, you do have to put the work in to reap the benefits of that. So, thank you for telling us whether you would rather do indie versus traditional. I think that's a huge thing, and that's something a lot of people have questions about. That was something a lot of you guys messaged me wanting to know, like, what Zachary Ryan, as an indie author, what he definitely recommended. So, thank you so much for answering that question. So that concludes today's author interview with the amazing author Zachary Ryan from Silent Screams, and he has a few words for you guys.
Well, thank you for listening to me ramble on, and I'm sorry that you had to listen to the voice because it's terrible. You can find Silent Screams on Amazon. It's on Kindle and it'll be on paperback soon. You can follow me on Instagram at Zachary Ryan Books. Twitter, Zachary Ryan Book. I know it makes no sense why there's not an S, but Twitter's weird. And then you can also follow me at Zachary Ryan on Facebook. Direct message me if you have any other questions. I'd love to answer. People, I have nothing else to do with my life. So, like I said, thank you so much for enjoying this and listening to me. Like I said, sorry about the voice. It is something I've been born with. Have a good day, guys.
So you heard him. You guys can go and download your copy of Silent Screams on Amazon today. Do not miss your chance to get your copy. And comment and tell me everything that you guys thought of this amazing novel. I want to thank everybody on my platforms on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook for everybody who wrote in all of your amazing questions. You guys had awesome questions, and I'm sorry that I could only pick so many, but I think they were amazing questions, and they let us see another side of the author, Zachary Ryan. I know I learned a lot. I think my favorite question was hearing what he thought about being indie versus traditional, and I also love to hear about what inspired him to write this amazing novel. So thank you so much to Zachary Ryan for doing this author interview with Hey, It's Carly Rae Book Club. You guys can follow me on my platforms to see more of this interview that I will be sharing. So without further ado, you guys can follow me on Instagram at HeyitsCarlyRae. You guys can also go to my Twitter, HeyitsCarlyRae1. You guys can also go to my Facebook page, Hey, It's Carly Rae. And then you can also join my Facebook book club for Hey, It's Carly Rae Book Club on Facebook. And then you guys can go on Pinterest, Hey, It's Carly Rae. I pinned Silent Screams, the cover on there, so you guys will see that on there as well. And then if you guys have a Tumblr, you guys can go to Hey, It's Carly Rae. And then finally, if you guys have not read about Silent Screams and everything about this novel, you can go to HeyitsCarlyRae.com for more information on there. And I also have all the links of where you can find Zachary Ryan. So thank you so much for joining me on today's author interview. I hope you guys enjoyed it. You guys need to comment below. Tell me what you guys thought of this interview. And if you guys want to see another amazing author featured on my channel, you guys can comment below as well. I hope you guys have an awesome day.